Thank you. So is it still raining outside? Did you brave the monsoons for me? I appreciate that. Thank you. It also made it much cooler outside, didn't it? So it was very, very nice. For those of you who were in my earlier talk, Deconstructing Web 2.0, this talk is very similar in that there will be no code, there will be no programming, you will see no curly braces or semicolons. So I'm just warning you that way up front. The coding comes tomorrow. I have a talk on Groovy. I have a talk on Grails. But this, again, is a big thoughts talk. And in this talk, what I want to talk about is not Groovy and not Grails, as I was talking about, as I will be talking about tomorrow. But I want to talk about web design, and specifically lizard brain web design. Okay. This is a test. We'll see if my American metaphors transfer nicely. When I'm talking about lizard brain, what do you think of? I heard a lot of good things. Yes, very simple, very things. The lizard brain is actually the oldest part of the brain. It's the part of the brain that controls autonomic functions. Functions you don't have to think about. Things like breathing, things like keeping your heart beating when you go to sleep at night, chewing and swallowing, things like that, and website navigation. These are all autonomic functions. Yeah? No, you don't believe me? No. Well, so the idea behind lizard brain web design that we'll see here is we want to build websites that are so simple, that it's just like exhaling. Have you ever been to a website that is so easy to use, even though it's the first time you've ever been there, you instantly know how to find your way around? That is the type of website that I'm talking about. Have you ever been to a website that even though you visit time and time again, you can never quite remember how to check out, never quite remember how to save your searches, never quite remember how to do those things? That is not a lizard brain website. And so to build one more metaphor for you, this is Bjarne Stroustrup, obviously the father of C++. And he tells this joke. He says he wishes that his computer could be as easy to use as his phone. Because everyone knows how to use a phone, right? And he says, my wishes come true. Now I don't know how to use my phone either. That's not what we want. That's not what we want. We want our websites to be so easy that we don't have to think about how to use these kinds of things. Now, I have an 8-year-old son at home, and we love going onto the web and playing free games. And so we go to a website like this. The website is called Free Flash Games. And you try to find where the free game is. It says play all over the place. It says, okay, do you want to play now? How about, do you want to play this game? Do you want to click to race? Do you want to click on any of those things? In fact, the free game is right here, the unmarked screenshot, kind of off to one side. Now you might say to yourself, well, the obvious point of this website is to trick me into clicking one of these other ads, right? They don't really want me to play the game. They're getting paid on click-through advertising. And that's all fine and good, but that's not a lizard brain website. That's a monkey brain website. Yeah? Moving farther up the evolutionary scale, the monkey brain is the limbic system, the part that controls emotions. And you certainly want people to love your websites, but they could also hate them just as much. We don't want that. We don't want that at all. This is a different problem, isn't it? They aren't trying to trick me into clicking something. They're daring me to find what I want to buy. You go to this website and you say, okay, let's say I want to buy a Sony HD TV. So I go looking around. Okay, see, I see Toshiba here. I see Toshiba there. Maybe they only sell Toshiba TVs, huh? And so then we start scanning this long list of items along the right-hand side. Have you heard of the rule of 5? Yeah, the rule of 5 is, that's about how much humans can keep in their mind at any given time. The rule of 7 is a little bit more. They actually did studies. In the United States, originally phone numbers were 7 digits long because they figured that was the optimal number that people could keep in their mind. Too many digits, people couldn't remember them. This is the little-known rule of 37. It's not a rule at all, right? When we're trying to find these kinds of things, you don't want to trick people into clicking on something, but you don't want to make it so hard that they can't get the things done that they want to get done. This website gives me a headache? No. This website is at the frontal cortex of the brain. The frontal cortex is where we do language processing, where we do problem solving, puzzles and riddles. But you don't want your website to be a Sudoku puzzle. You want it to be easy to use. And so this talk is based largely on this book, Don't Make Me Think, A Common Sense Approach to Web Design. Does Stephen Krug mention lizards? That's my unique contribution to the discussion right here. But we're talking about the same things. When he talks about a common sense approach to web design, you read through his book the first time and you say, oh, what a worthless book. I knew all that already. There's no great revelations in there. But then what you do is you go back to the book a second time and you apply it to your website. And you say, oh yeah, I didn't do that. And oh yeah, I forgot to do that. Oh, this makes sense in the abstract, but when I apply it to my website, I forgot to do that. And so it's a very thin book, but it's a very rich book that you can go back and visit over and over again and start saying, yes, these are the common truths that we should try to put together in our websites. So we're not going to go through the entire book here, but remember that in this spectrum of the brains, the lizard brain, the monkey brain, and the human brain, the frontal cortex, we want to be focusing on the lizard brain. Because if the lizard ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, right? But by the same token, if your website works at this simplest, don't make me think level, people will form an emotional attachment to the website, and they'll intellectually appreciate what you're trying to get accomplished as well. So, what do we mean by this? This is one search engine. How many of you use MSN as your default search engine? What? No one? Why not? Think about what we're trying to do in this website. We're trying to search. And yet we have blinking ads. We have all kinds of rule of 37 things going over here. All kinds of things. Does this make it easier to search? No. They're almost daring you to search based on this website. So if this is a thinking website, a thinking search engine, this is a don't make me think website. I'm not going to ask you how many of you used Google before. That would be a ridiculous question, wouldn't it? But I want you to imagine for a moment that you've never Google. How do you spell that again? Google. I'll have to try that out. Imagine you had never seen Google before and you went to visit. Take a moment to read through the links. Are there any questions as to what any of those links are going to lead you to? Images, maps, news, shopping, Gmail. Advertising programs, business solutions about Google, privacy, advanced search language tools. We don't have to think about any of these things at all. As a matter of fact, the only thing that we might have to think about is this right here. What does I'm feeling lucky do? It takes you to the very first hit. So it doesn't present you with a list of search results. It takes you immediately to the first. I'm feeling lucky. That's fine. That's cute, but everything else along here, it's a website. We instantly know how it all works. That's a lizard brain website. So, I'm going to give you lots of book recommendations. I love to read. I do a lot of traveling, and so flying gives me lots of time to read. This is another wonderful book. Have any of you read Blink? Yeah? Oh, good. I love seeing that. Good book. Did you enjoy it? Yeah, it's a very good book. Not a technical book at all. Lots of stories, though. And in this book, Malcolm Gladwell comes up with the idea of thin slicing. And he says thin slicing in his subtitle, The Power of Thinking Without Thinking. But that's not really it at all. You're not thinking without thinking. It sounds kind of like lizard brain, doesn't it? He says, in fact, what these folks are doing in story after story is they're thin slicing. Whether they're doing it consciously or unconsciously, what they're doing is focusing on the few core facts that make sense to solve the problem and ignore all the extraneous noise. And that's part of what we want to do as well. When we looked at MSN, there was a lot of noise, a lot of extraneous stuff. When we looked at Google, it was nothing but what we were expecting it to be. So we're going to give you lots of examples of different websites that do this kind of thing. But in our effort to thin slice here in the time we have together, we're going to focus on two things: how we really use the web and how we find our way around. These are the two things we're going to take a look at. So, let's talk about how we really use the web. Scanning, satisficing, and muddling through. To begin, it's really important to understand how we use the web. We have this metaphor for the World Wide Web, that the World Wide Web are all these great works of literature, that we're going to go to these websites and we're going to start at the very top of the web page and we're going to read it in its entirety and we're going to click through each link sequentially and read each page as well. Is that how we use the web? No, of course not. How long does the average user spend on any given web page? Less than 3 seconds. So either we're all very fast readers, no, or we're scanning. We're scanning the page for what's most interesting to us. Either we will click and continue, or we will click off the page and move on to the next. If we think about this, our metaphor for the web should not be an encyclopedia where we read articles. It should be a dictionary. If you think about it, if you remember what paper dictionaries were, you would pull it off the shelf, you would look up the word you were looking for, find the definition or find the correct spelling, close it, and immediately put it back on the shelf. And you might do that several times throughout the day, but that is the usage pattern that more closely models web usage. And so we should be building websites that lend themselves to this scannability. So let's take a look at Amazon. You can see I'm a big fan of Amazon. I use it an awful lot. So if I were a designer, I'd say, okay, I've got this personalization block right here, and then I have a recommendation engine, and oh, I got tag clouds. Everyone needs a tag cloud, right? And we got fuzzy searches. If you didn't find this, customers might also like this. These are all valid uses. These are all good features of any given website. But this is what the designer sees. The designer is so intimately aware of how the function works. The designer is the one that's read the page from start to finish and knows how the pieces fit together. The typical end user is not going to read this page start to finish. The typical end user is going to do this. Same page. That's all they see. First thing they say is, okay, good, I'm logged in. Scott, welcome to Amazon. Hi, Amazon. Good to be back. I'm going to search for a particular book, and in that split second, while I'm waiting for the results to come by, I'm going to look through the books that they recommend, but through a cruel trick of human physiology. We are hardwired for pattern recognition. Our eyes are immediately drawn to the patterns we recognize. And so in these list of books that they've recommended, my eye is immediately drawn to the cover I recognize. I already own that book. Why are you recommending that? And then the screen goes away, and away we go. It's not at all what the intended effect was it? So let's go back and take a look at this web page in a slightly different way. I know it's small, but that's okay. That works to our benefit. I don't want you to read the text. I want you to just kind of look at it. While you're scanning that page, I'm scanning your eyeballs. I told you I'm using an Apple Macintosh up here. Very advanced hardware, very advanced computers. This is what your eyeballs looked like on this web page, isn't it? Even without being able to read the words, you were looking for some strong visual cues. That's what we really want. We want these designers to hold our hands and to lead us through the website, show us what's most important and what's least important. This is another website that sells books. Standard disclaimer, I sell books through them. I've written for the pragmatic programmers. But I want you to think about these Amazon examples that I've shown you. Now look at this website. Do you see the difference? Yeah. They started with one book that they're featuring. By the way, that's a very good book, Pragmatic Thinking and Learning. I highly recommend it. But after that one book, they give you 2 or 3 more recommendations. Maybe they're related books, maybe they're new books that they are featuring. Notice where the search box is, right in the middle. Remember where else we saw a search box right in the middle? Google, yeah. We begin saying the Prags probably felt that you're going to be searching for particular titles, and so they're going to give you that big bullseye right in the middle. We get progressively less interesting information as we go down here from the list, but you can see that it's very easy to scan this website and find the things that we're interested in. This idea of scanning is very, very important. Even when you're looking at news sites, you're able to come in here and say, top stories, technology, entertainment, oddly enough. And then make a second pass through, skim the headlines. I know it doesn't show up on this screen, but the third pass through in this very light gray are how old the news stories are. This one's 8 hours old, this one's 20 minutes old. And so there's a lot of rich information here, but it doesn't feel overwhelming. We're able to scan this very easily, assimilate it, and move on. We also see the rule of 3 in place here. There are plenty of headlines, but they don't give you all 37 headlines. They give you the top 3. So, we come to a website like this, Scriptaculous. How many of you use Scriptaculous? A couple of you, very good. It's a JavaScript library, isn't it? Yeah, it's an effects library, fade to yellow, and do some good things like that. But I go to the website, I see Scriptaculous, and I say, it's about the user interface, baby. And that's cute. But does that tell you what it does? No. And if you don't know Scriptaculous, you say, all right, let me read a little bit more. Web reload. What does web reload mean? So all of a sudden, we're in that human brain thing. We're trying to decipher this website. Now, as I do read, I say Scriptaculous provides you with an easy-to-use cross-browser user interface JavaScript library. Okay, now I've been able to figure out what's going on here. But there are some simple things that they could have done that would allow us to scan this website, that allow us to lizard brain this website. Scriptaculous. It's about the JavaScript effects, baby. Okay, all right, so JavaScript effects. I can instantly tell I'm interested in JavaScript effects or I'm not. Okay, all right. Now, these headers over here, web reload, who uses it, get it already, docs and wiki. I can see what they were trying to do. Who uses it is great. Do you have to think that at all? Do you have to parse it and lex it? No, who uses it? NASA. Apple, CNN. Okay, I get it. So if we wanted to go with these nice little 2- and 3-word sentences, we could say Scriptaculous. It's about the JavaScript effects, baby. What is it? Who uses it? Download it. Learn it. You could make those subtle changes, and all of a sudden this website is a very effective website. Now, I like Scriptaculous. I like the colors. One thing that you probably noticed is, you ever notice how the web is so vertically oriented that when something like this is horizontally oriented, it's kind of interesting, doesn't it? It's visually arresting. So there are very good things going on with this website. But by making a few subtle tweaks just to the text, they could take this from a B+ to an A+. Because you find that websites are really billboards. You have that 3 seconds as you're driving by on the highway to decide whether you want to dig in deeper or not. So one of the things we can do is we can go in and we can see how many of these websites pass the billboard test. I know when I first went to Twitter, it didn't pass the billboard test at all. How many of you use Twitter? Yeah. How would you describe Twitter to someone who had never used it before? Microblogging, I heard your definition as well. Yeah, but microblogging is perfect. That's what most people will use. Where does it say microblogging here? Okay, not at all. It says Twitter is a service for friends, family, and coworkers to communicate and stay connected through the... I don't care. I'm gone already. It doesn't even begin to capture how wonderful Twitter is. I remember I was sitting with Neil Ford, a good friend of mine. We were going to Java 1. He says, "Are you on Twitter?" "No, I don't know what it is." "Oh, you got to get on Twitter. It's how we're going to keep in touch." "Okay, well, tell me about it." "Yeah, so what you do is you type in these little quick messages and we send them." I said, "Oh, so it's like SMS." "No, it's not like SMS. I write these quick little messages and I post it. And then anyone can read it." "Oh, it's kind of like a blog." Kind of. It's kind of like a blog, kind of like SMS. But what it allows is it allows me to follow my friends. And so now I know that Matthew McCullough and Venkat Subramaniam and I are all here together, but I also know that I've got a friend in Tokyo, I've got a friend in other places. It's a way for me to very quickly scan these kinds of things. In 140 characters or less. It's not a full blog. People I know have full blogs. I will read them when I have more time. I will use SMS when it's appropriate as well, but this is a new way to communicate. It's a wonderful website that sadly doesn't pass the Billboard test. Whose website is this? Apple. How could you tell? Or does it say APPLE anywhere on that website? No, it doesn't, does it? We've got that little Apple logo up in the corner. Yeah. We can see this even looks like a billboard, doesn't it? There's a great big picture. Notice that they start with what's most important and get a little bit smaller and get a little bit smaller as they go along. If you go to Apple's website and scan these items across the top, Store, Mac, iPod, iPhone, Downloads, Support, Search. Are you even going to think about what any of those things do? Not at all. I'm an unabashed Apple fanboy, so I admit it right here, right now. Right? But let's compare and contrast this with another website that many of you as Java developers are probably familiar with. Right? A little company called Oracle. Yeah. Now, storage devices. So great. What would you click on to find those? Would you click on services or solutions or support? What if I was just interested in a server? Let's make this very simple. Sun sells hardware. Student, startup, small to medium business. That doesn't tell me anything at all, does it? Those are questions that they're interested in from me, but that doesn't tell me. I'm a developer. I might be buying enterprise quality hardware, or I might be an enterprise buying the cheapest junk that I can. Right? And so in terms of a don't make me think website, I'm immediately thinking, all right. Let's think of another approach. Have you heard these terms before? Optimizing and satisficing? Yeah? These terms came from this book, The Paradox of Choice, Why More is Less. So you turn that, we always say less is more. He says why more is less. He gives example after example after example in this book where when we're presented with 2 or 3 choices, we can choose from them very, very easily. When we're presented with 7 choices, or 12 choices, or 37 choices, what we find is that it's so complex we don't make the choices at all and we move on. So we saw that in that commerce website. When you have to pick and choose from all those kinds of things, I know I move on. I can't find those things. But we see these come up over and over again. Amazon has 2 services that I love. One-click purchasing, which is very nice, and then Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime is where I can pay one flat fee. It's like $80 US, and it pays for all my shipping for an entire year. So I don't have to think about it anymore. Oh, and by the way, I can invite 4 other people along. So 4 people total, 3 other people. So when I pay $80 and my mother comes along and my sister-in-law comes on and things like that, I'm effectively paying $20 for a year's worth of free shipping. not trying to convince you to go out and buy Amazon stock or anything. What I'm talking about is this combination of Amazon Prime and one click allows me to forego this. How badly do you want that new book? Do you want it $4.50 worth or $4.60 worth? Okay, well, I can spare the dime. I want it that much. All right, well, do you want it $9 worth? Well, I don't know. That's double. That's all right. $9. How about $13? How about $19? How about $27.50? How about $136 worth? And all of a sudden, I'm thinking, how badly do I really want this? Yeah? Frontal cortex. We don't want to do that anymore. They want us to buy books. We should make it as simple as possible. And I bring this up here, but how many times have you gone to SourceForge or to Sun and tried to download Java? You say, I want to download Java. Which version of Java would you like? Which version do you think I like? The latest one, please. It seems to me that you're on a Macintosh. Would you like to download the Macintosh version of Java? No. Make me answer that question as well. So when I'm trying to download these things, what could they have done to make this one-click lizard brain easy? I can tell what browser you're using. I can tell what operating system you're using. I'm assuming you want the latest version. And so if you were to click on Download Java now, it would use some reasonable defaults. I don't want to hide these other defaults because at some point I would want to maybe download an older version of Java. Or I'm an instructor. Maybe I do want to download the Windows version and the Linux version so I can distribute these things. I'm not saying hide these kinds of options. I'm saying don't make me answer them every single time. Yeah? That is satisficing in a nutshell. So, one more thing about this before we talk about the navigation. Let me talk about how we really end up using these tools. Now, Google has some nice little shortcuts. If I type in vacation Hawaii, it's the same as typing in vacation and Hawaii, right? Google ignores those conjunctions in there. It ignores the and or and those kinds of things. But if I wanted to include those, I can surround the whole thing in quotes. Java developers, when do you use quotes in Google? Do you ever get any error messages? No, I don't either. Yeah, I never get error messages, so I never use this feature. Are you kidding me? I use it all the time. Whenever I throw an exception, I grab as much of that exception I think is interesting, copy and paste it into Google, surround it in quotes, right? Absolutely. So these are subtle but important usages of Google, and you learn these things very, very early on. There are some other features that you may or may not know about. Did you know that you can preface any search with cite colon? And that limits your search to a particular site. So if I say, I was at Dig a couple weeks ago and there was an article about CSS, I can go in and I can say site:dig.com CSS. And that will not give me all of the CSS references. It'll focus it on that particular site. A wonderful usability tip that I use all the time. And Google goes on and on. I use Google to figure out what time it is in various places. Do you think I typed in time Bangalore before I went here? You better believe I did. You know, we can use it as a simple calculator. But not just a simple calculator, but a simple converter. I typed in how much is 100 US dollars in rupee. I typed in, what is it, degrees Fahrenheit in Celsius? What are these kilometers you keep talking about? Huh? So we can use these kinds of things. These are all things that Google offers us out of the box. How many of you knew every single one of these features before I told you? Very good. You're a very smart crowd. How would you discover these features if you didn't know them? That's the hard part, isn't it? I spend a lot of time in bookstores, and I love the fact that they have Google for Dummies. because I laughed at that book as well. I picked it off the shelf, Google for Dummies. I had no idea it could do that. And then what I did is I put it under my shoulder like this, and I asked them to wrap it in a brown paper sack so none of my friends would see that I bought Google for Dummies. Yeah? But how do your users find all of these secret hidden gems? Do you have FAQs? Do you have a blog? Do you have tips and tricks? Do you have tutorials? Do you have screencasts and podcasts? If you build all these power features into your website, how do you keep them not from being hidden power features, but power features that your users can all take advantage of and exploit? Something to think about. All right. So we spent so much of our time talking about the design of these web pages, lizard brain, web design. We're going to spend the last 10 minutes or so talking about navigation, because this is something that's very important on the web as well. We can't talk about how websites look without focusing on how we get there as well. And what we'll find is that there are two categories of users. There are browsers and there are searchers. Searchers and browsers. Now, it sounds like I'm talking about software. I'm not. I'm talking about us humans here. These are personas, if you will, or usage patterns. Now, this idea of searching or browsing, we can apply to many different things. When you go to the supermarket, the grocery store, are you a browser or are you a searcher? Do you walk leisurely up and down each? No, of course not. You have a shopping list. And maybe this is a man talking. Maybe women do shop differently than men. I ask my wife that all the time. What are you out to buy? I don't know yet. Oh, that's when I get very worried. That's when I get very worried. But even in a grocery store, if I can't tell based on the signs, I will ask Google, very cute Google at my grocery store, yes. But I will ask, humans, hey, where is this item? Very rarely will I go to my supermarket and browse. This is what the supermarket looks like to me. I run as fast as I can down the aisle, throw what I need into the carts, and get out of there as quickly as possible. Some websites are like that. Other websites are much more leisurely. When I go to some place like Dig or Slashdot or YouTube or any of these kinds of websites, chances are good I'm not there searching for something specific. Chances are very good, in fact, what I'm there to do is browse for information. Now, what's interesting is you'll notice each one of these websites do provide search capabilities, but I almost never use them. Now, maybe on YouTube I do. Maybe on YouTube I'll go searching for something specific. Again, I mentioned this in my previous talk. My son loves Lego Star Wars. And what's so wonderful about YouTube is even if I search for that specifically, Lego Star Wars animation, very quickly I move from a searcher to a browser. Here are videos that are very similar to what you looked for. And so this persona can change based on the website, or it can even change while you're using the website. When you go to Google, are you a browser or a searcher? How many of you leave the search box empty and just click on I'm feeling lucky? No. But even Google allows you to type in something and find similar pages. It might be tough to see from behind, but every time you go to a Google search, if you look in faint blue text, there are similar pages. And it allows you, when you're searching for those error messages that you never get, I don't get them either, yeah? When you're searching for those kinds of things, sometimes what you can do is you can search for similar pages and you can find things in that way. Browsers, searchers, browsers. When I go to Amazon, I might start as a searcher as well, but very quickly move into browse mode. Customers who bought this also bought that. Now, when I go to city and state government kind of websites, I live in Broomfield, Colorado. It's a suburb of Denver. Chances are very good I'm not browsing. Residents who got driver's licenses might also be interested in paying your income taxes. No, that's not how I use these websites. So when I go to these kinds of websites, I do use the search capabilities up there. And so using search, using browse, it's not a question of either or which am I going to provide. It's a question of providing both navigation aids to your website. So as people come in with different personas, different goals to achieve, they're able to easily satisfy it. Does that make sense? Yeah. Let's focus on searching a little bit more here. I'm an author for IBM Developer Works, and so being able to go in and type in something, I searched for Groovy in that case. When we look at the search results, notice what they say here. Search by, sort by relevance. What does relevance mean? It's a nebulous word, isn't it? It doesn't have a hard and fast answer. Now, one of the things that's relevant to me is, well, I always want the most latest information on that. So that's one case of how relevance might work. Now, there are a lot of articles on Developer Works, and their sorting capabilities are very limited. And that can make the website frustrating to use. Let's do that same search on O'Reilly. Ah, yes, there's that same sort by relevance. But notice what they allow us to do. They allow us to refine our results. And you know what that is? Relevance. Relevance. Am I interested in articles and blogs on Groovy? Am I interested in conferences on Groovy? Books? Am I interested in specific authors? You can see what relevance means is different to each end user. Now, sometimes the more complicated the search, the more tools you need to provide the user on the back end to do these things. When I go to United websites, my searches can be very complex. I need to start at this airport and I need to end at this airport and it needs to be within this time frame and I'm interested in schedule or price and the number of passengers that are traveling. There are lots of search criteria that go in. And then the search results. United does a fairly good job. It's hard to demonstrate an Ajax website, but this price block here stays on screen no matter how I scroll up and down. This is my origination airport, that's my departure airport. And so I can decide if I want to have a one-hop trip or a connecting trip. I can decide what airplane I'm going to be using, what the flight information is. There's a very nice, rich set of results there that make it very easy for me to determine what relevance is, whether it's price or a single hop or the type of aircraft I'm going to be using, the time of day I'm leaving, any of those kinds of things. Relevance means different things to different people, so it's important that you provide them the tools to determine what relevance means in their particular case. So the last thing we'll talk about here is passing the trunk test. And we'll see if this cultural idiom translates. You all watch gangster movies, right? It's a requirement. It's a United States law that in every gangster movie ever made, someone needs to get thrown in a trunk and driven off into a dirt road somewhere. Bollywood has the same set of rules, don't they? Yeah? So the idea is you get thrown in a trunk, you rattling down the road. Oh, we crossed over a bridge. Oh, we went over railroad tracks. Oh, we went from cement to dirt to grass. You're trying to determine where you are. And then at some point the trunk comes open. The bad guy grabs you by your collar and says, try to find your way home. This is Steve Krug's metaphor, the don't make me think guy. He says this is how the web works. We are constantly submitted to the trunk test over and over and over again. Think about this for a moment. If I go to Google and I type in Groovy plus Ant, I get a whole bunch of links that will presumably take me to different websites that are talking about this. So let's say I click on one of these links and I'm here. I am now being metaphorically pulled out of the trunk. How easily am I able to scan this website and see where I am? I can see instantly that I'm in Java World. What's Java World? Solutions for Java developers. Excellent. There's the search box right over here that we're used to seeing. If we look down here, they do a pretty good job. It's about the rule of 7 or 8 I expanded out tools and methods here, and I can see that within tools and methods, I'm in open source tools, and I can see right here that I'm even on page 4 of 5 of this article. So in a quick scan, it's unconscious. It's like breathing or swallowing or keeping my heartbeat. I'm able to scan this page real quickly and see exactly where I am. Yeah? How frustrating is it when you get to an article and you can't navigate back to the previous page, or navigate back to the first page, or see what section you're in, or when it was written, or any of these kinds of things? These are all the things we just expect to be there. Well, that's common sense. But when they're not there, that's when it's frustrating. Even something like this, presume I clicked on another particular link. I got here using Ant from Groovy. Let's see how well they did on the trunk test. Okay, Groovy. Wonderful. I don't get a search up here, but I get some common ways to find my way through. But most importantly, along here, I get my breadcrumbs. So even if they don't provide a search website there, I'm able to see that I'm using Ant from Groovy. If I clicked back, I would get more articles on Ant and Groovy. If I clicked back, I would get the user guide. And presumably, if I got to home, I would get a whole source of information. Yeah? Passing the trunk test. How easily can you scan that website and know instantly where you are? So to summarize, we haven't been able to talk about everything in great detail, and we're all programmers. I hope no one was expecting me to say, well, if you just do this, if you just use this library, if you just write it this way, your website will be perfect. I can't give you that kind of specific prescriptive list. But when we look at very effective websites, and we look at not so effective websites, and then we look at your websites, and figure out where it falls on the spectrum, all of these things are very subjective, but they allow you to move closer to this ideal we've been trying to talk about, this don't make me think approach, this lizard brain approach. Because as I said, if you can unconsciously use that website, the emotional, I love this website, and the intellectual, I appreciate this website, will certainly follow. Did you enjoy yourself? I did. Thank you very much for your time. Do we have time for questions? 5 more minutes. Wonderful. Yes, are there any questions? Oh, it's the end of the day so far. I've had an opportunity to sit in a number of talks myself. I've been enjoying it as well. I promise you, if you come and see me speak tomorrow about Groovy and Grails, no more of these conceptual things. I will be showing you curly braces and semicolons and real code. So I hope you've enjoyed my talks today. I hope you'll enjoy my talks tomorrow. Thank you again for all your time.